Hello.
Hello.
We want to start right off the bat with a little preamble/disclaimer. This is a podcast about recovery, ran by two comedians in recovery. That's it. Everything we say is based on our personal recovery journey.
And no matter where you are in your personal recovery journey, whether you're actively engaging in your addiction or 4 years in, you are welcome to listen.
But that being said, we're not trained to handle a crisis. We're not trained to handle anything, honestly.
If you can't tell, this podcast is pretty hard to manage for us.
But if you are in a crisis, check out the show notes for some trusted resources that may help you and keep fighting the good fight.
Axios.
And now for the show.
Functioning.
Examples of functioning. Navigational sensors aren't functioning. Glad to see you still fully functioning.
Okay, now we're recording. Okay, hold on. Okay. All right, I'm ready.
Wait. Before you start, since we just started recording, would you like to introduce what you're doing?
No, I mean, yeah, I guess we can.
Or if you don't want to, that's fine. I don't know. There's some formalities, I think, that are standard, so it makes sense to do it.
Required for our podcast audience of 10. So today we are talking about the importance of writing a letter to your younger self. Think of it like this. What if you encountered a 21-year-old that's not you with the same issues you had, and what advice would you give them? So writing this letter, I don't know, I've done a bunch of research. I'm going to talk about it today. It can help you process your trauma, identify your triggers, and rewrite your story to develop a stronger sense of self, which I found to be completely true. So today, Thomas and I are going to read our letters to ourselves, and then I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty of it. Was that good enough for you, Tom?
That's a good intro. I didn't know all of that. So
well, yeah, you're coming in this blind. You're the audience surrogate, which means you will carry the baby for the audience for 9 months.
Oh, I don't think the church likes that.
I like being
I like being the audience's access character out of my ignorance, because I didn't understand the philosophy behind this.
Yeah, well, I did. I mean, when I set this up with you, I wanted it to just be kind of open. I also didn't know. I did my research post writing my letter.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got the idea because I saw, I get served a lot of like Instagram content that's very like therapy focused. You go through one breakup and you look at one like account that's like how to get over a breakup, and then that's all you get served. And eventually it led to a lot of just like not so much recovery, but just like getting over trauma talk. And I saw a couple of them that was almost like a trend that was like, I had coffee with my former self, with my younger self. And then I found that there's like a bunch of movies like centered around this idea.
Yeah, like 13 going on 30.
Yeah, exactly.
And that Matthew Perry one with Zac Efron.
Yeah, which one?
I can't remember what it's called, but
someone told me about that. Yeah. We can't name too many, so that we don't get sued. But
what? We can't even name the movies themselves?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't even want to play
showing trailers of this Matthew Perry movie from what, 2007?
Dude, Matthew Perry, R.I.P. He's one of us. Yeah, he didn't make it. Not all of us get out of this alive. Yeah. Could it be any more sadder? So it's from Friends.
Yeah, I know. Okay, I was wondering if you were doing a Matthew Perry Sorry, I think as soon as I said yes, my just so like perfectly, my wife knocked as I was saying yes to you, and came in and just knocked me off my train of thought. Anyway, I was perplexed by you doing a Friends impression, like a Matthew Perry Chandler impression, on the pod at all. So I think that's what threw me.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's my impression of Matthew Perry is so impeccable that it's like,
Well, it was like clearly that's what you were doing, right?
it
Like
really got everyone off.
contextually, that's what you were doing. If there was no context around that, I would have no idea what inflection you were going for or anything.
You know how he died, right?
In a hot tub, right?
Yeah, he was on ketamine.
Ah.
Yeah, which was wild. That's which is that's what Elon Musk loves to take is ketamine.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's like the new hot drug too. A bunch of people have been doing ketamine, from what I understand, and it
Have you
is.
done it?
Yeah, I've done it. I mean, I've used it therapeutically. Like I've done it 3 times, and each time I've done it, it helped me like come down from a hypomanic state. But a lot of people do it like recreationally. Like they'll go and like get on ketamine and like go to the club and shit. And
Yeah, my
there's this Atlantic article that just came out this week that's like all about the long effects of ketamine on the body. And it's
long ketamine.
Yeah, the one that stood out to me the most is it can cause erectile dysfunction, which that'll motivate anybody, mostly men, but that'll motivate any man to
It'll motivate any
getting on
number
ketamine.
of the half of the population. There's a lot of stuff that can cause erectile dysfunction, but
You'd be surprised. Well, the number one cause of erectile dysfunction is getting older.
right.
Yeah. Says the male-bodied individual pushing 40.
That's why in my letter I start out with saying, have more sex. You have no idea that you're gonna your whole body is not gonna even it's not even gonna be interested.
Dear
you're gonna
Tom,
look at college age girls and you're gonna go, ugh,
Dear
get
Tom,
me out of here.
Hold on tight.
Although I guess from an orthodox perspective, I would say don't have as much. You got to stop having as much sex as stop it.
That's the tension, right?
Yeah.
Let's get started. I found this to be really helpful, but before we talk about it, I want to hear your letter.
Oh yeah, okay. So I didn't do it very well. So
Well, you should. Well, you'll learn that you did it perfectly.
I don't think so, because I told you what I had, and you're like, maybe make it longer, and I said I did what I did.
I think I said that only because mine's kind of long, and I was like, I was feeling self-conscious about it. It took me like a week to recover.
From writing it?
Yeah. I'm glad you were ready for this. I'm glad your notes all set up. You were even early.
Well, okay. This is not to excuse my my unpreparedness, but I finished this notebook like 2 days ago, and I was so happy just to like shut it completely and say sayonara to this. I'm moving on to the next notebook.
That's kind of the theme of the podcast today.
Speaking of, I know that we're gonna do the letter and stuff, and I'm stalling because I need to still find it. But I was watching a video the other day, yesterday, 2 days ago, whatever. I was making my wife watch this video from Elephant Graveyard, on YouTube. I don't know if you know them, but
No, is that a band or a graveyard?
no, it's some Canadian, and he's like comedy police type guy, and he was doing a video on Joe Rogan, which some of it I agreed with, some of it I
Also does a bunch of ketamine.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man.
I know they're all like on
are like the forefront of the
right?
ketamine. The ketamine's replaced opioids.
Well, you know, everything has its season.
Okay.
You know, vanity of vanities.
Yeah,
All is
yeah.
vanity.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, at some point he was talking. So the Elephant Graveyard host was saying something to the effect of Joe Rogan's podcast, because he has become the comedy czar, has led to a lot of people just making their podcast like his. So with the basic premise being, what's it like being a comedian? What's it like being in the twisted mind of a comedian? Blah, 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 blah. And he was noting that the more saturated the market has become, the more aware he is, or the more he's realized that comedy is stupid. And and he's not even sure at this point whether or not it was ever good. And I was telling my wife, you know, this feels good to watch because, like, I have a clear trajectory in mind of where I want to go, and it feels good to just kind of shut the door and go, stand up really does, it offers nothing for me.
Yeah. Same.
Okay. I found the letter, but I can't tell if I wrote it twice.
What?
I can't tell if okay. Let's see.
You're such a Luddite. Imagine if Benjamin Franklin was like, well, I think this is the proclamation, the declaration.
Yours?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a letter. I'm not writing an email to my 21-year-old self.
You can type it. You can do whatever you want. You could put it. You can make it a voice note, and we could cut it in. We'll talk about that too.
Speaking of that, last week, let's talk abstinence, for real abstinence and sobriety from all the stuff. Took a break from my screens. No phone, no computer, no blah blah blah. It was awesome. We're gonna get a flip phone. I'm out. I'm dialed out.
Dude, I thought about getting a flip phone.
Yeah, I'm doing it. They're like, I found one that's like $70, something like that. I'm done. Anyway. Yeah, I don't know if I just echo something. I'll just read it. I'll read it.
Okay, just go. Just go for it. Yeah.
Dear past self. Speaking of, I don't want to keep it around. But had I known
maybe you're avoiding this. I feel like you're avoiding this. I feel like you're really avoiding this moment. I feel like
I just want to say, if I had known the philosophy behind this therapeutic intervention, I probably would have said something different. Like if this was a letter to a 21-year-old person who is going through similar, I thought I was writing to me. But if I was writing to a 21-year-old person who's going through similar difficulties, then I probably would have said something different.
Well, we'll talk about that too. That's a great point that I'll bring up later once you get through your goddamn letter.
Okay. Dear past self, I've been debating what to tell you and what to leave out, but I've decided to tell you nothing. Stay the course, because you have no idea what's coming. Some of it will be excruciating. Some of it will be wonderful. Days will come, and they'll feel like you're being hit by a car. And others will come where you'll feel like you can see everything and understand everything. I don't want you to know anything about the beauty and the darkness that lies ahead, because it might mean you avoid a turn I made or zig when I zagged. So stay the course, because you have no idea what's around the corner.
You didn't sign it off? You weren't like sincerely
Nectarios. You're going to find that out. You're going to find out about that too.
Nectarios. Uh, I was really hoping that you would have addressed it as Dear Toast.
Oh man, dear past self, dear
For,
toast, missed
for our
opportunity.
listeners, Thomas used to go by Toast for a very long time. I think for like the first year I knew you, I didn't even know your real name. I just thought Toast.
That my middle school teachers had a very similar reaction in 7th grade, I believe. My art teacher like was reading a like a test that I turned in. She said, "Who's Thomas?" Everyone said Toast. And she said, "Oh, I didn't know that. I thought that was his name."
Man. Okay. That was good. That was good. I'm going to read mine. Yours
All
was
right.
good. You did it perfectly. You did it
Okay.
great. Yeah.
Made me nervous.
Sorry. No, you did yours perfectly. Okay. I'm going to read mine. Mine's a little longer, much longer. Dear Jody, you're 21. I know because I remember how you spent that day at your favorite bar, convincing everyone and anyone to buy you a shot until the owner tells you to stop telling people you're 21 since he's been serving you for years. Your friend Bailey hosted trivia that night, and for some reason, you kept screaming, Vertical Horizon! To every question. The band. The band Vertical Horizon, because that was one of the answers. I don't remember much over the last 20 years, but I definitely remember that. Congrats on hosting one of your small town's most popular and only events, a weekly poetry jam. That's no small feat. I know you got unfairly fired from the coffee shop where you had it, and how they asked you to keep running the jam, and you refused without being paid. And I know how confident you felt talking to your dad about negotiating a salary, and then he came up with some ridiculous contract, something like $20,000 a year for one night a week. I should tell you that he was drunk when he did that. He's drunk a lot. Don't listen to him anytime past lunch. He and Anne love drafting up their ridiculous contracts, don't they? They make you sign them to get money for basic needs and a repayment plan with dates. Then they say that they'll get it notarized the next day, and if you don't pay, they'll take you to court. I know you're nervous and hurt about that, but just so you know, they can't enforce that. You don't deserve that. You left physical abuse in Dallas in hopes of being treated better, but got another form of abuse instead, and that's not fair. You should know Dad's a coward. Let him go. Let them all go. Most people are cowards. It's hard for you to understand that because you've always had an uncanny bravery about you. I wish I could tell you to drop out of college and leave Milledgeville. Graduating won't make Dad proud or earn his respect, but I can't. I wish I could tell you to take your ADHD testing seriously and stop chasing women who are incapable of loving you, but I can't do that either. But here's what I can tell you. I'm sorry. Thank you, and I love you. I'm sorry you went through so much pain. I'm sorry you were abandoned so many times. And I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. Thank you for your bravery. I want you to know that despite every enemy you've met and will meet, you kept your light. The one grandmother told you to protect on that long trip down the Natchez Trace. That spark inside your heart that loves little things like birds and bugs and basement comedy shows, and those little moments between friends. The part of you that cooks and writes and got sober and puts on podcasts. The part that believes that broken people can be restored. That's what brought all those small town people, regularly over 100, to your poetry jam every week. It's still here, it's still yours, and it always will be, because that's where your love lives. I know you're worried you'll lose it under the weight of everything, that you'll become bitter and heartless. But I assure you that after 20 years, your spark is stronger than ever. You don't hide it, you let it guide you. Thank you for being the first person to believe in it and for reminding me what it's capable of. I love you. Your ultimate J.O. bro, Jody Bumpkin. I mean, come on, we've been JOing together for years, for decades, even our entire lives.
That's oh, that's a pretty sweet dismount, I think.
Stick it. Yep. How? So, how did it feel to write yours?
I think I wrote down what I told myself. I was just kind of like thinking, just like yelling, or not yelling, but just talking out loud.
In a loud, angry voice.
Yeah, yeah. I yeah, because there was a lot of stuff that you just kind of have to not work through, but you just have to look at and go, yeah, I mean, I've either let go of that or I need to. But I mean, ultimately, what every decision I made, which a lot of them I regret, a lot of them I don't, but a lot of them they're so interconnected, right? Every regrettable decision was followed by probably another regrettable decision, but they're interlocked with the decisions that I made that were great, you know? And even some of that great stuff turned into regrets, and some of the regrets turned into great. So I think it was hard it was nice to just kind of sit with that and go, man, it really is what it is. Like there was nothing I could have done better. Because if there was, then I mean, there's nothing that I can do better now. Everything is done. And it's led me here. And that's cool.
Yeah, what a beautiful display of self-compassion.
I didn't think about it like that.
Yeah, I felt very much the same. I had to like I really chopped off the first half of this because it was like I know you're sad because blah 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 blah, and I just like kept getting into like I almost like was like reliving these experiences.
Yeah.
But then I was like, okay, but like if I like it, that's why I started like if I was telling this to somebody who was outside of myself, what would I tell them? And especially if I'd known them for as long as I've known myself, right? Like I've known my 21-year-old self for 19 years and 18 years. I still have I need to reconcile with my 12-year-old self at getting better at math. And so like I tried to like boil it down to kind of like what is something that I could say? And recently we talked about this a little bit through text of I've been really feeling the weight of grief on my shoulders, and I was trying to think like what's the way that can help sort through these things that I'm definitely feeling like I'm definitely still holding in, because it came out in the first part where I was just like, in the fucking coffee shop, they fuck those assholes, and I was like mad all over again. I was like, it's like you were saying, oh shit, like this is still something that I'm upset about. But like on the outside, I'm like, okay, but if someone who was 21 was upset about it, I'd be like, dude, who gives a shit? It's just a coffee shop. And so it kind of what it did for me is it really, especially the dear to someone else, like the dear Jody to Jody, young Jody to old Jody, to middle-aged Jody, still young at heart, is that it really helped me find more wholeness in myself, right? It kind of like it reminded me that there was a red thread between the Jody now and the Jody then. There was like this through line that connected us, despite all of the struggles and things like that. There's still very much essentially the same person, and that was a nice little discovery that I found through doing this. It was cool.
Yeah, I like that.
So this is called what we're doing is called expressive writing, which is like it's not just like fancy cursive or like going like bang, pow, or like
Expressive writing, not onomatopoeia.
No, or like writing in just emojis. Um, I guess you could. But so it's called expressive writing, and it was founded by this guy in the 90s named James Pinbaker. Pine Baker? Pinbay. It's like Penne and then a baker of Penne. Um, and and so he was really interested in like some of this like somatic stuff that's really big these days. Like he was trying to find the connection between the body and the mind, and how trauma can show up in physical ailments, right? Which is like at the time pretty radical. Now it's like, especially in podcast spaces, like very much, well, at least in mine, very much an accepted thing, right? I mean, we have the Body Knows the Score, which is super big. We have people who are like, I mean, your wife is a somatic therapist, right? Like, like there's a lot that like there's a lot of stuff around that. And so he was like one of the guys who was big in kind of founding this theory. And so he did this survey where he asked a bunch of people if they had any sort of sexual trauma before the age of 17, right? And he, like, the question is important because like Gabor Mate kind of brings this up a little bit. The question is important because, like, especially back then, and I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, we didn't talk about sexual stuff. That is not going to happen. It is already taboo to talk about sexual stuff, and it's already taboo to talk about traumatic stuff. So both of them together is like taboo squared. It's taboo on taboo. And so he found that that like the trauma itself was obviously painful, but what was more painful was keeping it a secret, was the actual, like, the hiding of it, and not then being alone with this secret, right? Like, I was watching this podcast with Mel Robbins where Gabor Mate talks about this, and she reveals that, she had a traumatic experience, and he talks about how, like, that kind of secrecy multiplies that pain exponentially. So taboo squared equals trauma squared. See what I did there?
What that makes me think of is one of a small issue that may come up if someone is interested in expressive writing is this idea that if you sit on something, even if you are expressing it for long periods of time, sometimes you get to the point where you're just re-traumatizing yourself. Because if you are just keeping it between you and a pen or keyboard, sometimes that's still that feedback loop is pretty limited.
This is definitely like a complement to therapy,
right? And that's the other thing, which goes back to what you were saying about the secrecy. This is why, like, abuse can be very subtle, where, and I won't speak of any like experience, but when someone does something to you, or when someone hurts you, if indirectly or directly, but they make it seem like that's not your story to tell, where I don't know if I'm articulating that well enough, but
No,
if
no, it's great. This is great because we're going to talk about that too.
yeah, if someone abuses you, whether emotionally or physically, a lot of times it's emotional, where this can kind of slide under the radar, where they like do not want you to talk to other people about it because that's not your story to share. And we get into this weird conspiracy of silence where we have to sit on trauma and or abuse that's been directly or indirectly has affected us, and because we want to be respectful of someone's quote unquote story that's theirs and theirs alone to share, whatever, then we have to sit like we're basically just being like impaled on this information that's hurting us, and it becomes this loop of repression.
Yeah. And I think that's good to note because it's about, that's the kind of, we'll talk about this a little later, but that's where it kind of helps you. This expressive writing can help you define your story or even reclaim it.
Yeah, it helps to untangle a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So he did this other study after he did this survey, right? Where he got a bunch of college students, and he asked them to write in his lab for 15 minutes for 4 days. So they do it like after class, they would come and write for 15 minutes, and then he gave them a coin to flip, and they were like, if they like heads or tails, you're either gonna write about just like regular topics like your shoes or what your dorm room looks like, or you're gonna talk about the most traumatic experiences in your life. Whoa. And so he did that, and he found that the ones who talked about their traumatic stuff went to health services half as much as the ones that didn't.
Huh.
And so he did some more studies, and he did some more, and I think that's kind of what we're getting into. Like he even did some study. So this was all in the 90s. So he even tested like a group of people who were HIV positive, and they were able to show that this expressive writing, this kind of like writing about your traumatic experiences, has like a measurable bump in your immune function. And like other researchers have found that it like helps with like asthma and arthritis and like hypertension, like all of these like diseases that could be that. I mean, it's definitely not the answer, but it definitely like contributes because you're letting go and releasing all of these things that your body has. And I think what you're saying that I think is really cool is that like writing is not just putting words on a page. It takes like examination. Like you're writing all day pretty much. Like you have to focus your thoughts. You have to navigate what you want to say. It's like a lot of thinking and examining. And I think knowing that you're going to write about something kind of gives you an opportunity to start to acknowledge and like confront that trauma. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, when I have to write a story, I'll be thinking about the story for like 80% of the time and writing for 20% of it.
Right.
And I think that's like, I think because of that intentionality, it allows people to be less reactive. It kind of gives them that space to approach these subjects.
I don't know if this has been, I guess this isn't like a standard process of writing, but a lot of times, at least for me, if I'm trying to write something like an essay or just a reflection, whatever, if I'm trying to be intentional with it, I'll like sit down kind of going back to the 80-20 thing that you were saying, I'll sit down and I'll try writing, nothing. I'll move to the kitchen, nothing. I'll go to a coffee shop, nothing. And either that day or it'll take a couple days where I'm like, I'll continuously sit down and go, I'm going to write this. But then nothing happens. But the whole time in the back of your mind, you're processing what you're going to write. And then eventually you can sit down and it all just kind of comes out. Which maybe is akin to procrastination, but
No, it's a subconscious act. I mean, it's
a process that just takes a minute for your I guess your software to ruminate.
Yeah, I mean, like one of my most popular jokes came to me in a dream because it's just like a subconscious thing.
Yeah.
It was the Mad Max one. Did you know before the apocalypse, Mad Max was just regular old Office Max?
That was from a dream?
I said that in a dream, and then I woke up and I was like, that's funny.
Really, like one of the only people that's ever occurred to actually write something down when a joke comes to you in a dream. I've had so many times where I wake up and go, oh, that was really funny. I'll definitely remember it in the morning.
Yeah, I make a lot of my decisions based on dreams, to be honest.
I don't know if that's a good idea, but all right.
No, it's great. That's why they say follow your dreams. That's what they mean.
Is that another dream joke?
Yeah.
That's what we were talking about in my magic class today. We were talking about
Is that a class where they teach you how to play the card game?
Yeah, it's Magic the Gathering 11-20. We were talking about dream divination.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I can't there's a term for it, but I can't take in anything. So
I found out in my Spanish class that to sleep is dormir in Spanish, right? But if you're like a doctor of sleep or an expert of sleep, you're an experta de sueño, and sueño means dream. So you're a dream expert.
That sounds like it's ancient. That's an ancient term.
That's what I said. I was like, it sounds like a medicine man, like or like some girl you met at a festival.
Is the conjugation of dormir duermo?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Soy duermo. No, wait, no.
I am sleep.
Sleep.
I sleep.
I've taken like 7 years of Spanish 1, so I have nothing in it.
So I think like that's kind of what we're getting into is like this. It kind of forces self-reflection, right?
Yo duermo.
And it also
yeah, okay, sorry.
You're saying I sleep? You can just say duermo, I sleep.
Yeah, but I was just making the sentence grammatically correct.
I got it. I'm glad you got there. It's good.
Yeah, thank you.
Está bien.
Bueno, gracias.
Yeah, so it does that, but it also gives like it provides like more of a tangible space for self-reflection, and because you can see it, you can almost track your moods if you do it over like a little bit of, like over time, right? And then like through doing that, you can uncover like certain triggers that can lead to like your triggers that lead to wanting to drink or like wanting to get whatever your fucking drug of choice is, or whatever that's like messing up your life, whatever you're in recovery from. It can help you find like, oh shit, like I remember on Thursday I wanted to drink, and now I'm looking at my journal here and I see that I'm like crazy sad. And like I actually experienced this really recently. I went through a bunch of my old journals like 2 weeks ago. Bad idea. Don't ever do that. I mean, you should maybe do it, but just get ready, pour some tea, and take an anxiety pill or a beta blocker or whatever.
It's not a coffee drinking task.
No, this is not like I'll do this and then go to work. This is kind of This is definitely like you got to get fucking prepared. Um, so I went through a bunch of my journals, and I discovered that there's this like really like hard pattern, and I have all my journals since college, that I've had since college.
Whoa.
And like and it was crazy too, because I could see in my journals like when I was drunk, when I was high, when I was hungover, like when I was being hypomanic, or when I was like crazy depressed. I can tell by like my handwriting would be a little differently, especially when I was drunk, of course. But just like the syntax was different and stuff like that. So I would look at it and be like, oh, this is high Jody. Like this is not a joke, but I have ha 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 right next to it. It just says butts. But
What's
I found
the
it.
pattern?
So I found, here's the pattern. Trust no one, be better, try harder. Everyone is letting you down. Why can't they be better? Why can't they try harder? And what am I doing wrong? And what's wrong with me? Fucking decades of that. Yeah. Yeah. It was wild. But it also, I don't know, it was kind of helpful. I mean, it was very helpful, because when I saw that, it gave me this, it made me realize, oh shit, I'm still doing this. I'm still trying, like, oh, I got to study harder. I got to make the podcast better. I got to keep pushing. I got to try to get my blue belt in jiu-jitsu. I got to make my career bigger. I got to be funnier.
Gotta do this.
Yeah, and it was like so goal oriented, and like it was really rooted in the abuse that I experienced as a kid, because when I was a kid I always felt very left out, because when you're being abused, you can't tell anyone. It's really alienating. And I always had this like feeling that I missed that day of school where everyone learned how to do life. And I was like sick that day or something. And so I was constantly trying to like catch up. And so, I mean, this is like, and I say like, I've been feeling this way all the way up until about a month ago. When I looked through these journals trying to be like, okay, something is not right. And I think like being diagnosed with cyclothymia was really a big eye opener for me. And then learning more about my condition really helped me be like, oh, fuck, like I've been doing this for a while. Let me go back and figure out like, it really just like, where has this affected my life, and how to let go of those core beliefs that have been affecting my life. But the main thing that it made me realize is that I need to chill the fuck out. Because I was so goal oriented that I was like, I wasn't present,
Yeah.
So, so I was just gonna say, expressive writing is just, it's great for that. It's great for like being able to follow that pattern, and putting it down on paper kind of gives you something to refer back to later.
Yeah, and on that note, the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis stuff about linguistics.
From Star Trek?
No.
Oh.
No, not from Star Trek.
I was thinking of another hypothesis.
Yeah.
Trek related.
Anytime someone says hypothesis or like science jargon, I think Star Trek. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis talks about
Warp? Sapir-Whorf?
Whorf, yeah.
Whorf? W-O-R-F or
W-H-O-R-F.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'm tracking. Okay, sorry.
Okay. But it's helpful in this regard because the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is it's relative linguistics. So, like, the language that you speak and the language that you use, the hypothesis is that it renders reality, basically.
Oh, dude, I was reading about, there's a really good New York Times article about this about a couple of months ago.
Okay, well, there you go. Yeah.
Keep explaining it. Sorry.
Well, it's really, really fascinating stuff because, it's not just the language that we use, it's also symbolism and just everything's language, basically. Everything's language. And so this is a way for us to understand ourselves and understand reality and perceive reality. And this, in application to just like the micro level, it's really, really helpful for people to, if you are going to do like expressive writing, to continue with that. It's helpful to start talking in ways that it's going to benefit you. It doesn't necessarily have to feel true, but the language that we use, like for instance, going back to what you were talking about with the way that you were talking about others and yourself for decades, that's something that I've also experienced, and it still am to less extent than I have in the past, but still there's stuff there. But the ability to look at that and try and start using different language to talk about yourself, using different language to talk about your goals or what you're interested in. Like the way that I think, especially coming out of stand-up, everything that I do is so content production fast. It's all and that's tied in with my relevancy too. Because like, have you written a new joke? Are you getting out on stage? Are you showing up? Are you promoting yourself? Are you blah blah blah? Are you a brand? Are you a product yet? Because you have to be a product to survive. And the way that has affected, I think, everybody, not just stand-ups, like with the social media culture that we're in.
Oh, for sure.
We're all just becoming product and economic units and all this other stuff. So it would behoove us to take a step back and begin looking at the language that we use, whether in speech or writing. And your writing, the way you write affects your brain. That's why it's so important to write with a pen. It does affect your thinking.
It does. Yeah.
And
when you write with the pen, the movement, or a pencil, the movement actually helps connect neurons. There's like a bunch of studies on that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so using that frame and then bringing in language, it's not like affirmation. I'm not trying to say like affirmations that's only one small point. It's actually looking at the language that you use to describe yourself and to talk about others and to talk about your relationship between them and yourself. These are important categories of thought that affect how you treat yourself and how you treat others and how you act. And looking and doing what you said, like, yeah, make some tea and look at your journals if you're a journaler. It really does help to look at the through line that's underlying all of your thoughts, to go, that's the core. This is actually who I am. And it's hard to look at because a lot of the language that we've developed is survival based in a lot of ways. And that survival based language is fairly aggressive and combative and hostile and just trying to get to your foxhole. And if everybody's an enemy, then that's how you're going to talk about them, even in your own mind.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what's great about these letters, is because it separates, it allowed me to take more of an objective approach to that pattern and then express compassion for what I was going through, which allowed me to reframe what I was going through. And I think it's easier to have compassion for someone else than it is for yourself. That's just the natural order of things. Yeah. But yeah, I think what we're talking about is self-compassion, which is, I think, what was so great about your what you said about how when you were reflecting on your letter, like it really showed a lot of that kind of like, yeah, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the regrets that I had. And like, I think that's self-compassion right there. And I was reading, I can never say his name, Thich Nhat Hanh.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
not
the,
going to try to say it,
the
but I
Buddha
know what you're
Triger.
talking about.
We were reading them in the Dharma recovery group that I go to, and there's a chapter that we went through that talks about right speech and
Mm-hmm.
right listening, and he spoke about how it's important to take the time to speak with intentionality and to ensure that just like you were saying, like to ensure that like the words that you use are beneficial, um, and actually express how you feel deeply. And so if you can't do that, he says like take some time, step back. I mean, he even talks about that's what's so important, what's so great about writing is it allows you to really sort through what you really believe and what you just want to say in a reactive response. But what I found really cool about that chapter was about what he called right listening. Um, and then there was a line that I pulled from it called "Listen with the eyes of compassion," which
Hmm.
I love so much because it makes no sense. Uh, it's like
Yeah.
very, it's like one of those like Zen koans where you're just like, all right, buddy, uh, listen with my eyes. Um, but so like, but what he says is like when you're talking to somebody
Mm-hmm.
or you're listening to music, even to like actually uh, intentionally listen, like focus on what you're listening to, so that you can respond in a
Yeah.
way that is true to who you are. And I think that's true even towards yourself, like within your own thoughts, like right speech, right listening, like but in your own head, like try to listen to what you're telling yourself and try to
Yep.
listen, yeah, and try to watch out what you say to yourself or be more intentional about what you say to yourself.
That's, I think it's Saint Paisios who talks about
That's a really awesome pizza joint here in Chicago. I'm just kidding, it's not.
Saint Paisios. He says, maybe it's Saint Porphyrios, but in any case, one of the Athonite saints is discussing your mind, and an important teaching in our tradition is called nepsis, or watchfulness, and also called sobriety. And
Is it really?
it's, yeah,
Oh.
yeah. Um, and it's about mental vigilance, but more than that, it's like noetic vigilance. So it's like the eyes of your heart. And Saint Paisios or Saint Porphyrios, I can't remember exactly who it was, but they said something like, your mind is a thoroughfare. And so whatever's in there doesn't mean that it's yours. It could potentially just be passing through. And a lot of times we have the inclination to grab onto stuff and identify with them and pull them in and entrench them. And these thoughts are not our thoughts. And it's good to set a guard over your heart and over your mind and be, this is the sobriety about it, be very mindful, be watchful over what is entering into your thought, because a lot of them are just passing through. And it's easy for us to like want to pull them in and start a dialogue with them, basically. But it's good for you just to let them go. And
Yeah, they call that in Buddhism, they call that monkey mind.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah,
because it's like a thought just swings from tree to tree and you just like you just watch it go by, you don't hold on to it.
There was I think the imagery that Saint Paisios used is that it's like your mind is an airport and all these thoughts are going around that are airplanes, and you're like bringing them in to land, but you don't have to do that. So similar line of thinking, but it's really, really important in orthodoxy. Like watchfulness is super important, because you can't really pray if you're just letting in a bunch of noise and then dialoguing with the noise, and it's just too much. And especially when you get into a place of talking down to yourself, that's so addictive. It feels so good to beat yourself up. Oh,
Comedy, because it gets laughs. I mean, that's why I really hate
yeah,
like
yeah.
self-deprecating humor when people are like, "I'm so fat, I'm such a piece of shit," and you're just like, "Man, like, I should I hug you? I mean, what's up,
Right.
dude?"
Yeah, are
It's
you okay?
yeah,
Like, I know that they're laughing, but are you? How are
and
you
there's
doing?
also an aspect to it like you're getting an easy laugh, buddy. Like, come on, like put some effort into it. But
That is my knee-jerk reaction. If someone like self-deprecates, I go, that's trite.
yeah,
Try
exactly.
harder.
Yeah, what are you in high school? Um, but yeah, it's heavy, and it's like it. You know that they're carrying that.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's kind of a good way to go into the next thing that's really cool about this letter writing exercise, uh, which is do you know what narrative therapy is?
No.
It's a dance group out of no, it's
I would have believed you had you
was a
finished
dance
that
group.
sentence.
It's my dance group for
It's
here.
like an improv dance troupe out of Chicago, out of Champaign, Illinois.
Yeah, we do long form.
Yeah. We're not one of those short form dance troops.
No, we do
We do a
long form
Harold in our
improv,
dance.
short form dancing.
Yeah.
So it's this type of therapy that basically it's like what we were saying. It's like reauthoring your story. So by like adding that like second person perspective, by like saying like talking about your younger self as a you, kind of allows that objective disconnection to start seeing how that story played out from a different perspective, right? So I did a little research on it, and I found this cool book by an author named Alice Morgan. It's called "What is Narrative Therapy? An Easy to Read Introduction." And it says,
Sounds like it's right up your alley.
yeah, I was like, what is that? I Googled what is narrative therapy, and it was the first one. And I was like, easy to read. I like that. So, so it says for narrative therapists, stories consist of events linked in sequence across time according to a plot. As humans, we are interpreting beings. We all have daily experiences of events that we seek to make meaningful. The stories we have about our lives are created through linking certain events together in a particular sequence across a time period and finding a way of explaining or making sense of them. This meaning forms the plot of the story. We give meanings to our experiences constantly as we live our lives. A narrative is like a thread that weaves the events together, forming a story. So, like, when you write a letter to yourself and you have that objective disconnection, you start telling a different story than what you've been telling yourself. And that can change things like those self-deprecating assholes who are like, I'm a real piece of shit when I drank, to I was doing what I could to survive. Or, you know, showing that sort of like self-compassion, or like
Okay.
it like alleviates like the shame of addiction, which when I first got sober, boy, was I full of shame. I mean, I was just like, I still feel it. Like there are agencies that I will never be asked to go back to for good reason. And like sometimes they'll have like job openings. I'm like, and then it all comes rushing back. But like it gives you like an opportunity that like to kind of tell a different story. Like instead of being like, oh, I'm bad, to being like, oh, actually I was working with what I had. I was doing my best.
Because this, I don't know if
It's like Wicked. It's like Wicked, you know? Oh, you never? Yeah, I never saw it. Wicked is like it's like the perspective of the Wicked Witch of the West.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like that. Like apparently she wasn't that bad. She was like trying to start a revolution. She was like a revolutionary.
Well, that's not always a good thing. Let's not. We don't need to. We're not the Wicked Witch of the West.
She was like, oh, she's bad. She wants to hurt You know, but like, so it says that like the ruby slippers were like her sisters or something, and they gave like more of a perspective to like who she is and like her motivations. She wasn't just like,
it's like who's that guy? Grindel. I can't
yeah,
remember who wrote it.
yeah, it's like Grendel, yeah, but it's like from the perspective of the bad guy from Beowulf, and he was just like really, he was like tired, and he was more of like a nature thing.
Yeah, it was more existential than you thought.
Yeah, yeah. See, it's like that. It's like it.
But okay, this is. Do you know Jonathan Peugeot? Have you come across his work?
No.
He's Orthodox. He's an Orthodox iconographer, but a lot of what he talks about is art and meaning making and myth and patterns and all this stuff. So I recommend him to anybody. He's great. That said, what this makes me think about is how a lot of times when we get into that shame cycle, we are disconnected from reality, ourselves, and the world around us. So a lot of times it's like an infolding cycle where we just keep going in and in and in. And this isn't a good process. And so the ability to retell a story, one, you have the option of kind of reclaiming the narrative, but also what's important, and I think something that I saw in the previous part that we were talking about is this ability to connect back to yourself is the ability to connect with others. So when you're compassionate to others, yeah, that's great. But you can only be as compassionate to them as you are with yourself. And it's really important to be hard on yourself when you need to be, but it's also really important to take a step back and go, all right, look, that's why we were acting that way. We don't have to act that way anymore because we're in a safe place, or we are, that like we did that because this, and this. There are reasons for that. Otherwise, we get caught into this shame cycle of I'm defined by my past. And therefore, the past 20 years are indicative of my next 20 years. But you're not connecting back to yourself and you're not connecting with others when you're doing that. So you're going to keep fragmenting, basically, until you can reclaim this part of yourself and go, I was in a bad place. And that shouldn't be my identity because I don't have to be in that place anymore. I was given a set of tools that I used to the best of my abilities. And maybe I didn't use them as well as I could have, but it is what it is. Here we are. And so finding ways to be compassionate and retell these stories helps you connect back to who you are, which is a person in relationship with others. Because if you can't do that, then you end up becoming just an individual lost at sea, not connected to anything.
Yeah. It's interesting you bring that up because I've been going to smart recovery meetings. And last week we touched on this a little bit because, that's, you said fragmented identities. Like that's like the biggest thing that happens to people who are in recovery, right? Like once they get sober, there's this like fractured identity.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, that was something that was really hard for me personally. I was just like filled with like, I woulda, coulda, shoulda, I could have been a contender. I used to love this and now it's too late. And like, that's kind of what addiction does. It like takes those away from you. And then there's a lot of like shame and guilt wrapped up in that. But in the smart recovery meeting, like he had us sort of say, we talked about hobbies and he was like, what did you do before you started drinking? What did you do while you were drinking, and
Mhm.
what do you do now that you don't drink? Or they just said addiction. That's the cool thing about smart recovery is they don't call each other alcoholics. They don't call it a disease, or like addicts. They don't call each other addicts or anything like that. So it's not these like identity defining, I'm an alcoholic. Hi, I'm Jody. I'm an alcoholic. They don't do that. They'll
Okay.
say like, hey, I'm Jody. I'm here because, or I'm here to help. I'd be like, hey, I'm Jody. I'm here because of drinking, smoking weed, doing psychedelics, and just having a great time. No, and but you know what I mean. Like you just list. Like some people will be like, I'm here for eating. I'm here for smoking cigarettes. There's like a whole slew of different types of people there for different types of recovery.
Okay.
And I think that's really important because, like you were saying, like the last 20 years isn't indicative of the other 20 years, but like being like I am an alcoholic
It
is
fixes you.
yeah,
Yeah.
it like defines you.
Yeah.
But saying I am here to help abstain from drinking is more of like, oh, I'm here to better myself and rediscover that identity. And I thought that was pretty cool. Like, I think that's what's cool about these letters because most people, not me, but most people started drinking around 21. That's why I was like, write a letter to yourself at 21. Because that was like when we can legally drink. Um,
Oh, okay.
and that kind of connects you back or connects the writer back to what they did before they started drinking. And that can complete more of like a wholeness because then they can start like that's kind of how I found my little like through line like oh I still write. I wrote when I was before I started drinking, I wrote while I was drinking, I write now, but I wrote different things. And so now I want to connect back to the soul of my writing, which is what I did before I started drinking. And and I think it really kind of helps heal that fractured identity and give more of that Oris Boris, that full kind of that whole entity of who you are and who that person who's writing is. Yeah, it was fun. Well, I wouldn't say fun, but I would recommend it. You know, it was an experience.
I mean, you opened it by saying it wrecked you for a week, but
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, I feel like 1,000 times better.
yeah.
I want to keep exploring it, but it was interesting. It really kicked off a few weeks of introspection, where I started to explore that side of myself that I felt very disconnected from,
Yeah.
and try to bring it more back into who I am today.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So I guess to end these things out, I want to urge all 10 of our listeners to give it a shot. Don't take a shot, but give it a shot, and and then write a letter to who they are at 21. I found this like super cool website called selfcompassion.org. Dude, it's awesome. They have like self-compassion exercises, and the third exercise is writing a letter. And so she like and so she like broke down like how to do it, what to think about while you're doing it. And I took some of that from here, so nobody can, because if you're like driving or something, I don't want you to like try to put in the website. And so
do it at a red light.
Yeah. So it's simple. What do you want your younger self to know? What would you do to warn them about or encourage them to do? And how do you want them to feel about the future? And I also want to add that I find that it's always important to address things that are kind of rooted in heavy emotions and in grief, especially, or in anything that requires letting go, to repeat the phrase, I'm sorry, thank you, I love you. And try to work your way through that. And that's it. That's the show. I was thinking if anyone wanted to write their letter, they could send it to us and we'd read it on air, but then I was like, that's weird.
I know. I thought I was thinking in my head while you were encouraging people to write their own letters. I thought, and then they should post it on Facebook, probably, right? Because that's the next best thing. That's where everybody posts their weird, cringy, long essays about how their life is going. So
and tag us to build our brand. Our brand is important. No, but seriously, share us with your friends and stuff like that, so that we can grow and help others. So, anyways, keep fighting a good fight.
Axios.